Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff. As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on this show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are breaking down our top 24 wide receivers. So continuing on with our positional rankings for redraft leagues this year. And we're going to get started with Jeff, your number 24 wide receiver for 2024.
All right, this was not an easy list to compile. Just want to be very clear with that. There's going to be a lot of wide receivers that are left off this list, leaving a lot of people angry. But my number 24 wide receiver is DK Metcalf from Seattle. He's coming off a number 16 finish last year, but there were a lot of injuries and a lot of rookies that I anticipate going a little bit higher. But DK Metcalf comes in at 24 for me.
I have DK a little bit higher, so I'll talk about him more when we get there. But for me, I have at my number 24, I have Keenan Allen with the now Chicago Bears. Downgraded quarterback, crowded wide receiver group. So he's not, I know last year he was on pace to be the wide receiver 3 until he got hurt. I think that he's going to get less targets, less yards, less touchdowns than he did last year, but still be a very, very good wide receiver 2. Like you said, it was extremely hard to compile this list. There's a lot of guys left off that I do also like, but Keenan Allen, I don't want to spend a premium pick on him this year, but I do think that there is upside if he does develop to be Caleb Williams' number 1 wide receiver, number 1 option. He could be higher than this. So, Jeff, how do you feel about Keenan Allen here, and who is your next guy?
I'm going to let you go with the next guy first,
Okay.
but Keenan Allen is my number 27 wide receiver, so I couldn't get him into my top 24 because there isn't enough stats and options or whatever going on for Caleb Williams to give out. So I think DJ Moore and Keenan Allen's overall outlook, even Rome Odunze, who I'm much lower on for 2024, there really isn't much to give right now. So they're stretched as far as they could go, in my opinion. So, but I don't hate him there because he's really close and in the ball.
All right. So next guy is another geezer, and that is at number 23, Amari Cooper with Cleveland. He's still the number 1 guy there. He wants to earn a new contract. I don't think Jerry Jeudy is very good, so I think they're going to lean on Amari Cooper a lot. So I still like him. Unfortunately, he is getting older, and there's a lot of young guys that I have slated above him. So, Jeff, how do you feel about Amari Cooper at number 23, and who do you have there?
So Amari's coming up a little bit later on my list. But first, let's get to my number 23, and that is Zay Flowers from Baltimore. I think that he'll take the second-year leap. He finished as 29 last year, so this really isn't a big leap to have him grow a little bit. There's less in that offense right now with OBJ moving on. So I just think that Lamar is going to be concentrating more on throwing this year. So, but my number 22, and I'll let you break down my number 23 here in a second, but my number 22 is Amari Cooper. So that's kind of why I was trying to get to number 22 here. So we're right in the same ballpark. I think he's going to be Deshaun Watson's go-to wide receiver. He was early last year, so I just anticipate that to continue this year.
All right, so when it comes to Zay Flowers, I like the player. I like the talent. I don't like where I see the usage turning into for this season. Mark Andrews is back for a full year. I think they're going to use Isaiah Likely. They have some weird fascination with trying to make Rashad Bateman a thing. I don't think that Zay Flowers is going to be the focal point that he was last year when they basically had to. And I also think that they're going to lean on the run game, maybe even harder than they did last year, where they led the league with a 51-point-something% rushing attempts over passing. So for me, Zay Flowers is a wide receiver 3. I actually have him at 34, which I think is movable because I think there's a cluster of guys that you can move around there. But yes, he is well outside my top 24.
We'll see. Hopefully I'm right there. He finished 29 last year, and there's less around him, so I'm hoping that
I think there's more around him this year. I don't think you can count OBJ. I don't think OBJ is the
that's
OBJ
the only thing that he lost
7 years ago.
That's the only addition or subtraction, really, for the offense.
Mark Andrews is kind of an addition because he was out for most of the year last year,
They
and
played together though.
he's the number one option.
That's fine. There's two mouths to feed on this offense, and
Well,
Bateman's going to be the other mouth.
all right, we'll see.
Will likely not see the field a lot this year as long as Mark Andrews is healthy,
I think they're going to try more two tight end formations, is my guess.
and that's fine. But the other wide receiver on the opposite of the two tight end formation is going to be Rashad Bateman. So I will take my chances with Zay Flowers every day of the week there.
I like Zay Flowers. I think he's a good dynasty guy. I just don't think he's going to produce wide receiver 2 numbers this year. I mean, they did draft Devontae Walker as a day 2 pick, I believe. So I don't believe in him as a good prospect, but they have a history of getting those fast guys and trying to make them a thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Who is your number 22 though, so I can make fun of you as much as you just made fun of me for my number 23 pick?
My number 22 would be higher if he had a different offensive coordinator, but I don't trust him with wide receivers. So I have George Pickens, who is the clear number one option on that team at the wide receiver position. I have him at number 22. I think he's more talented than this number, but Arthur Smith has not been friendly to wide receivers. So number 22, he lays. So Jeff, how do you feel about Pickens here? And who do you think would have been a better spot here? Better
I
guy here.
don't. I'll be honest. I don't have Pickens in my top 30. In my top, he's actually number 35 for me. He hasn't put it together for a whole season yet. This might be the most talented quarterback that he's played with, but we'll see how much Wilson can get him the ball. We know he struggled last year with Sutton and even Judy. So he struggled getting some consistency going with both of them, and I think that's going to be the annoyance here. But I think it's reasonable given the fact that he finished 26th last year. So hopefully this offense opens a little bit up under Russell Wilson, and you better hope Russell Wilson's the quarterback and not Justin Fields. As you know, I had
I think
Justin Fields
either
coming
one,
in.
either quarterback is an upgrade over Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. So I think George Pickens, him, and Freiermuth are going to be the two focal points here, and I think that they're going to see increased stats, increased usage, but George Pickens' upside is limited because of the offensive coordinator Arthur Smith going there as well. So kind of high upside, low floor, but I think talent-wise, I feel like he has to be in the top 24 for me. My next guy here is Deebo Samuel with San Francisco. I think he's second, third, fourth fiddle. You can move these guys around, but I don't think he's going to finish as high as he did last year. And I think he's still a very good wide receiver, and you can't really put him outside of the wide receiver 2 spot. So I have him at number 21. Jeff, how do you feel about Deebo here, and who is your number 21?
Oh man, so I love Deebo a lot more than you do this year, so he's going to be coming up quite a bit later for me. Deebo finished 12 last year, so this is a huge downgrade. They didn't add a lot of 2024 pieces. I don't see Ricky Pearsall being a 2024 piece that takes away any targets from anybody that's already there. I still think they're going to run out with Ayuk, Samuel, Kittle, and McCaffrey like last year, and you can expect similar statistics for them this year. So unless you think someone's going to jump over him, you're going to get a lot more of the same, and this will give a year of seasoning to Pearsall for when Ayuk inevitably leaves.
Just real quick though, for Deebo Samuel, his passing stats, his receiving stats are not that good. He's finished as high as he did last year because he got 5 rushing touchdowns, which is insane for a wide receiver to get that many looks. So I don't know if that aspect is going to continue as much as it did last year. They keep adding running backs behind Christian McCaffrey, so I don't think Deebo will be used as much in the rushing game as he's been. That's why he's lower for me. But actual passing stats, actual receiving stats last year, he had 60 catches for 892 yards. So that's not wide receiver 1 numbers for me. I can't reasonably put him super high, which is why I have him at 21.
Did you add in his rushing stats as well? Because he had 37 carries, 225, and 5 touchdowns.
He has less than that on my projections. They also brought in Pearsall as well, who I think is going to take some targets. I think Jennings is going to take more targets than he did last
They're
year
not
as
going to
well.
take
So
anything. They're going to run out the
we'll
same
see.
offensive last year and use them as ancillary pieces.
We'll see.
You don't pay a top 10 wide receiver and then roll him back.
Well, this is the last year of his deal.
It's
I
false.
mean,
That's false. 2025 is.
oh, so he's got 2 more years.
Yep.
Okay.
So, but in that case,
No long-term commitment.
You use them up though. You don't save them and conserve them so they can go out and play for another team. You burn that tread off the tires.
We'll see, but there's a lot of good wide receivers this year, so I can't put him higher than this. This is where I have Debo.
Right. So we're on to my 21 right now, and coming in at 21 is one of your favorites. That's actually a lie. It's T. Higgins from Cincinnati. I believe he has a bounce back year. I believe Joe Burrow plays the entire year, which is going to really help him. But he finished 17 and 20, or he finished 17 and 22. I did actually get that right. In 2022 and 2021. So I do expect him to bounce back into that same tier this year.
He is not in my top 24. He has not had a healthy season yet. He has not played all games in the season at all. To me, he continues to trend downwards. They brought in Jermaine Burton, who I think is a better version of T. Higgins. I don't know how much he'll chip in at him year one, but I think he will. And also, it sounds like Jamar Chase is not getting enough targets, so Burrow is going to be targeting Jamar Chase even more. I don't see the upside everyone else sees in Higgins anymore. I don't think he's long for the Bengals unless he signs for a very cheap deal. So I can't put him there. I can't put him in the top 24.
I mean, the Bengals are paying them over 20 million this year, so it's not chump change. And they decided that they needed him on the team this year. They franchise tagged him. So what incentive do they have not to use him? That's kind of the question. And as I said, 2022 and 2021, he finished 17 and 22. So he was a wide receiver too, both of those years. So just last year he was injured, missed the top 24. But I fully expect to bounce back, and I expect Burrow to be fully healthy this year. And I expect Burton to take Boyd's production, not Higgins' production.
I think that's a start for Burton, but I think he'll take over the number 2 role sooner than later.
Oh, right. So we're on to my number 20. And this one's actually a little bit of a surprise for me because I've been kind of down on him in previous years, but he's been pretty consistent in this range through his first 2 years in the NFL. So I have to put Chris Olave here at number 20. He finished 19 last year and 25 the year before. So I feel like this is a very fair spot entering year number 2 with their.
I think that's a reasonable spot. I've had Chris Olave slide up and down my rankings. I have him a little bit higher, but I have a different guy here at 20. I have Devonta Smith with Philadelphia. I think he'll still be very productive, but I think he'll take a backseat even more to A.J. Brown with the offensive coordinator change here. So I still like him, and I have Smith here, but I have at number 19, I have your homeboy Stephon Diggs with Houston. I think he has the potential to exceed this spot, but I think this is a reasonable spot considering how loaded the wide receiver group is this year. Jeff, how do you feel about Smith being number 20 and now Diggs at 19?
So, spoiler alert, Smith is my 28th wide receiver this year, so there's just too many wide receivers to actually fit into a top 24. So I do expect AJ Brown to take a good chunk, and we'll kind of see what Philadelphia does. I think they added a few pieces, and they'll have Goddard back full time this year. I mean, obviously they added Paris Campbell, which isn't that big of a deal, but they added a couple rookies as well that could really cut into some of this. But they did pay him this year, so going along the lines of what I usually do, follow the money, and they probably will try to get their return on investment here. But we'll see. I'll always stand on the leg that it was very silly to pay Hurts, Brown, and Smith all at the same time. They're all locked up through like 2028-ish. So I will stand on that leg forever that it's foolish to pay over 100 million for 3 players. But we'll see. We'll watch the fall of Philly very slowly here over the next couple of years.
Well, they did spend all their draft picks on defensive players, so all of those guys are on cheap rookie deals. So That's how they work their magic with the cap number.
We'll see if it works though, because this and what happens when they excel and they have to pay one of them within 2 years because they're not a first round pick, or within 3 years, and then they're like, we don't have any money for you. It
The cap
happens.
just keeps going up, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll see with this lawsuit, and the cap could fall again because that impacts revenue. So the cap could fall again, like it did during the COVID year.
Yep, that's true. So how do you feel
So
about Diggs being 19, and who do you have there?
I think you're very low on him this year. We have to remember that the last 3 years he's finished 7, 4, and 10. So he's never finished below 10 in any season. Through the first 6 weeks last year, he was on fire. And then there is a rumor in Buffalo that he had a core muscle issue. And basically that's what led towards his second half downfall. So, and then Joe Brady also kind of contributed to that as well. So, and that kind of proved that Buffalo didn't need Diggs in that moment, so that's why they ended up trading him as well. So this is kind of how we ended up here.
Can I just
But I
add a
think
few things?
Yeah.
Can I just add a few things about Diggs? His ADP right now is wide receiver 21, 2 spots below where I have him. A lot of other sites have him at wide receiver 24. I have him at 19, which I feel is better than the competition. And me putting him here is not me being low on him, despite him being 30 and probably 31 when the season starts. I think he's going to put up very good numbers. There's just a deep wide receiver group. So there's guys I like more, but I'm not low on Diggs. I'm high on other guys.
Yeah, he's just never finished below 10, and I won't believe it until I see it. So, and I do think it's very comparable quarterback play. Even if he is competing with targets with Collins, that offense could feed to pretty easily.
Well, I mean, what has Buffalo had for target competition for him? Because
sometimes that hurts though.
yeah,
You
but
get doubled and tripled.
Not the way that they were using him. They force fed him the ball. So now he's got not only Nico Collins, but Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz. And I honestly think it's going to be hard to get him the same number of looks that he got in Buffalo. Like he may end up with somewhat similar receptions, but he's not going to get the same amount of looks. That just means everything comes down.
Wait, you just said he might end up with the same number of receptions.
Might be more efficient because he's more open, but he's not going to get the same number of targets. He's not going to have 50 more targets.
We don't get points off of targets though. We get points off the reception. So if he gets the same number of targets or receptions as last year,
I think he'll.
Then therefore he would remain with the same stats.
I think it's still going to be lower. It's still going to be lower. It's not going to be the exact same. It's still going to be lower.
You led the premise with even if he gets the same amount of receptions.
No, I said
targets
similar.
are going to go down.
Check the tape. I said similar. I think he's still going to get. It's still going to be lower. Everything's going to be lower. The catches are going to be lower. The targets are going to be significantly lower. Touchdowns are fluky.
Yeah, his quality targets will go up though.
Yes, he'll be more efficient. He'll have better quality targets. He'll be open more often because there's too many guys for their defenses to cover. So he'll be more efficient, have more yards per catch, probably. Better yak, but I just can't put him. I can maybe move him up a little bit, but I can't move him up that much because there's a lot of players I like.
Absolutely. But he finished wide receiver 10 last year with 8 touchdowns. So he only needs a touchdown every other game to pull off wide receiver 10. I have him at 9 touchdowns this year, just so we're on the same page. But he's more of a possession receiver, and that's what you look for in the red zone anyways, is more of a possession receiver, especially when the space gets smaller and you can't run by people.
I still think he's a good wide receiver. It's hard for me to give him the same rankings that he's had in his previous stops.
Yeah, he's still the same exact wide receiver that he was last year. Like, I know people want to say that he fell off of a cliff because his stats went down, but there was an injury and a coaching change, and there was a lot of things that contributed to his lower stats the back half of the year. And I'm not willing to buy it unless I see it again this year.
Well, I think it's almost criminal to draft him at 24 or 21 where he's going. So
that's what I'm saying earlier. He's too low.
I agree with you. He could be a sneaky ad later in the drafts or in the middle of the drafts. I mean, Houston fans are probably going to draft him higher than consensus, but
I'm not going to be in any leagues with you, Alex.
But I mean, I still have him. I know it's not as high as you would like for him to be, but I still have him higher than most people out there.
All right. So what are we now? We're on my number 19, it looks like, because I know we just had a big Stefon Diggs debate. We won't have to have one a little bit later when he comes up for me. But number 19 for me is Jalen Waddle. And I know he had a bit of a down year last year. He was injured. If you remember, he was injured in that standalone London game, and he never looked the same after that. But he's put up stats of being wide receiver 16 and wide receiver 7 the 2 years prior. So I do expect a little bit of a bounce back. I do expect Miami to throw decently about the same amount as last year's.
I actually have Jalen Waddle just a little bit higher, so I'll talk more about him there, or I could just talk about him now and just say I have him whenever I
You're
have him.
very
But
big. You're very big on Miami offense this year. I'm noticing because Jonnu Smith. There's and I know we've talked about him offline. I don't think he made your top 15 tight ends, but I know we talked about him offline, and you were a little bit higher on him. And then their running back situation. So maybe Miami might be your sneaky playoff team this year.
With Johnny Smith, it's difficult because I think the talent is there, but will the usage be there or not? And even if the usage isn't there, will he have massive yards after the catch potential? I mean, that's possible, as well as touchdown potential since he is a bigger guy, but it's kind of like measuring in between. Better than what Gesicki was, less than what Johnny was with Atlanta with Arthur Smith. So somewhere in the middle. Didn't make my top 15. I think he is someone sneaky to keep an eye on, especially during preseason reports and training camp to see if he seems like he's going to get more usage. Because outside of Waddle, who I like and I have a little bit higher than you, and obviously Tyreek Hill, I think that there's a vacancy from the receiving core because it's those two guys and the running backs that are
Braxton
going to
Berrios.
get. Dude, Barrios is not a thing. He's not going to be a thing. He's going to be involved in special teams. I don't like you
Odell
like him,
Beckham
but
Jr.
Odell Beckham Jr. is a shell of himself, and he might provide some possession help, but he doesn't have the explosiveness that made him usable. Honestly, he's not getting those special catches. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the leaping ability anymore. So they need something. And I know they also drafted a wide receiver. I don't think he's going to necessarily stand out this year, Washington. But Jonnu has a chance to be outside of the top two wide receivers and top two running backs to be the next guy in the pecking order. It's there. But
So,
Waddle is definitely number two in that system and is very good, very usable. I like him.
agreed. Are you ready for my number 18 now?
Let's go for it.
Number 18, I have Rashee Rice, and this, I'll be full disclosure here. He could move all over this board, but he finished wide receiver 27 last year. He was a rookie. I expect a second year jump as long as he's on the field. We have heard nothing about a suspension so far. The timeline kind of follows a lot along the lines of what Elvin Kamara was, like when he got arrested to like the court case and everything like that feels like it's following along the same lines. So if anything, if I was betting right now, I would assume the suspension will take place in 2025 and not in 2024.
Okay. To me, there are a few things here with Rashee Rice. He's not in my top 24. He's significantly lower than that for me. I still think suspension this year is on the table. Unlike Kamara, Rashee Rice, his actions actually hurt people and was extremely reckless. So, yeah, what do you mean? What are you making that look for? He got in a car accident by
He's
racing.
on a video punching someone in the face. What do you mean he didn't hurt somebody?
Kamara didn't. That was one of his crew members.
It was him too.
I don't think so. I don't think Kamara was the one actually doing it. I think that's why he didn't get that bad of a situation there. Rice, I think, will be worse. I think he also had another issue that popped up too. But on top of all of that, Travis Kelce was a little bit banged up last year and played through it. I think he's going to be healthier this year. Granted, he's 34. He should be more adjusted to the Taylor Swift dating stuff, so won't be as distracted. I think they brought in Marquise Hollywood Brown, and they brought in Worthy through the draft. I think those are going to be significant target competition with Rice. Rice got force-fed last year because the other wide receivers were so bad they didn't trust him, so they had to force-feed it to Rice, who was one of the top guys leading in drops last year. So I don't think Rice is going to be as big a focal point as people think. I think people are going off too much from last year. I don't think he's the preferred guy to get the ball to at all. So I don't buy it. He has lower draft capital than Worthy, who was just drafted in the first round. They traded up for, and I don't see it. I think he's going to get a suspension. I think he's going to be the fourth option. They also brought in another tight end, Wiley, who they like to use multiple tight end sets, as we've learned with Gray over the past couple years. I don't think Rice is going to get anywhere near the stats. To me, Rice might even be a wide receiver 4 when he is playing. So I'm not in on him at all.
We'll see. But he could get some great value this year if he doesn't get suspended. So something to keep in the back of your minds. I do think he has the ability to produce these numbers. His projections actually came out a lot higher than this, but he got marked down for his potential suspension coming up.
Just curious, Jeff, what is his projections for you right now?
I knew you were going to put me on the spot there. So I have him at 97 grabs for 1,091 yards and 9 touchdowns.
That's insane to me. Like that is absolutely crazy talk.
Is it though?
It is.
Because he had 79 grabs for 938 and 7 last year. So you can't grab an extra 10, 15 balls.
Who was the other wide receivers that they had, Jeff?
Do you not understand the quality of target goes down as you lose pieces around you? And Kelsey was out there the entire time, even if he was injured.
I don't think he's going to get targeted nearly as much as he did last year.
Okay, but if he grabs a higher percentage of his targets, then that's moot. But also, Patrick Mahomes finished quarterback 8 last year, and you have him at quarterback 2. So there is that jump in stats from quarterback 8 to 2 as well that I don't think you're factoring into this.
Yeah, well, in addition to Rashee Rice, in addition to Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown, they also brought back their friend Mark Hardman, as well as they have Kadarius Toney, who may or may not be used. They spent a reasonable draft pick acquiring him, and he hasn't worked out yet. There are a lot of guys to go around. They also have Irv Smith Jr., Jared Wiley, Noah Gray. They have a lot more options this year than they did last year. So I can't see a world where Rashee Rice gets nearly that many targets or catches. Like, just to show how different we are, I have him with 59 catches, 733 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
So you have him at 20 less catches than his rookie year when he was learning an offense.
Yes. There's 2 more guys that are better than him that just came onto the team.
Okay. I also have Brown at 94 and 1,008 yards and 8 touchdowns. So Brown is well compensated there as well.
What about Worthy? What do you have Worthy at?
So Worthy's not going to be a year 1 option. I think they've made this pretty clear. I have him at 36 grabs, 448 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think the 3 of those guys are going to be a lot more spread evenly than people think.
I think
Worthy is probably going to have the lowest stats of those 3, but I don't think that there's a wide receiver 1 or even a wide receiver 2 coming out of any of those 3. I think they're going to be wide receiver 3s at best, just because there's so much competition.
We'll see. We will see, but I know there's rapport with Rashee Rice and Patrick Mahomes going into this year. I know for a fact there is because I watched them win a Super Bowl together last year.
Okay, all right.
Where
so that was 18?
Yeah, for you now.
All right, so 18 for me is a guy that you mentioned earlier, and that's Chris Olave. He's seemingly the only real target there. I mean, A.T. Perry may show up this year. We'll see if he takes a bigger role. I know that they have a lot of lesser options to mix in as well, but Chris Olave is the main receiving target there, and I like him here. He's just 2 spots ahead of where you have him, I believe. And then my number 17, another guy you've already mentioned, Jalen Waddle here, and he is also just a couple spots ahead of where you have him. So I feel like we're in the ballpark there. Jeff, you feel pretty comfortable with them being at that spot? And then who do you have at 17?
Yeah, I feel comfortable. Obviously, C. Waddle is the ancillary piece in that offense. And I think he's by far the ancillary piece, whereas where we argue about Diggs and Collins, I feel like they're a lot closer, and they can. So you can't say for sure one's the ancillary piece and one's for sure the number 1 right now. Like that's an arguable thing. Whereas Hill is the 1 and Waddle is for sure the 2. All right, going on to my 17 here, and I love Olave. I don't know if I'll end up with any Olave this year because clearly you're higher than him than me, but I wouldn't mind a piece of Chris Olave this year.
Well, before you continue, I just want to point out Rashee Rice is currently going ADP wide receiver 37.
Yeah, but draft sites haven't even really opened yet. Like Yahoo just opened last week, so I don't know if you can fully take that into account just yet, but I understand what you're saying. A lot of people are baking in the possible suspension.
A lot of people are excited about Xavier Worthy too. I think they're overhyping his value as well. And some people hype up Marquise Brown. It's not as high as Worthy seems to be, but
I think our 2 Super Bowl teams drafted 2 first-round wide receivers that weren't meant to contribute in 2024. I think they're meant to sit and learn the playbook and be stars in 2025.
And you're, of course, referring to Xavier Worthy and Ricky Pearsall?
Yes, sir.
All right. So who you got at 17 now?
17. This one's going to be very controversial with you because I know how you feel about him. But I'm going to go Jayden Reed from Green Bay here. And I do believe that he's going to set himself apart from the entire wide receiver core in Green Bay. He did last year. He finished wide receiver 23. So we have to remember they have 4 young guys, and he's the guy that took the step forward.
This is it's difficult for me, right? Because I do like Reed. I do. But it's a situation where they've got, like you said, those 4 young guys at wide receiver. They've got 2 young tight ends. I don't know that Jayden Reed pulled that much ahead where he's going to be the de facto number 1. Like, that's a leap of faith on your part, and you're not the only one taking that. There's other people out there on Reed as well. I just until I see otherwise, because Christian Watson, when he played, he got a large target share until he got hurt. You can't trust him to stay on the field. People point out that Dobbs, even though he's probably not going to be a wide receiver 1, he got significant target share in crucial games. Wicks is an ascending talent, I feel like. So I feel all 6 of these guys, the 4 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, it's going to be spread around a lot. So I don't know if I can buy into any of these guys as a for sure top 24 wide receiver. I don't fault anyone for taking a stab at any of these guys in that realm. I can see a case for Reed being the best PPR option for sure. So, I mean, it's not crazy, but I'm not quite willing to get on that level yet.
Right. So we can hop over to my number 16, and that is Brandon Ayuk. And I know you're much higher than him than Debo this year because I know he'll appear a little bit later in this segment for us. But this is where I'm comfortable putting Brandon Ayuk. He's going to be below Debo for me.
I think that's a reasonable spot. He finished 15th last year in half-point PPR, so it's a very reasonable position to have Ayuk in. I like him. I think he's going to have something to prove. I don't know if he's willing to sit out if the contract negotiations don't go his way. So maybe that's a potential scare, and that would make it reasonable to have him lower than where I have him. Not a bad spot for him. I actually have someone you mentioned earlier that's in the same division at number 16, and that's DK Metcalf. So I know he finished 16th last year. I think he stays there because I think the new system will more feature him, be more vertical, and I think he'll be able to show off his skill set a little more this year. So yes, things changed around, but sometimes the more things change around, the more they stay the same, and I think he stays at the same rank that he was last year.
Yeah, so I can kind of see that. I do see JSN taking a step forward. I don't see Tyler Lockett taking a step back. So it'll be interesting. I think he could get better statistics if Howell went in, because I think Howell's more of a gunslinger, and that really benefits an outside wide receiver that loves to sprint down the field. Also, going back to Ayuk, he was franchise tagged this year. Is that correct? Or is he playing on the fifth year option?
Fifth year option.
Got it. So he really can't hold out because he would actually get fined every day. He's under contract. And that would be money that he would never get back. So could he could he sit out less than 100%? He could. I mean, that's always a possibility.
Well, there's always a possibility that San Francisco waives any fines. So that would be interesting.
I didn't think you could do that for veterans anymore. Or maybe I didn't think you could do that anymore for vets.
I don't know. But
so they changed the rules on that to prevent these holdout situations. So there's could be hold-ins where you're like, oh, my ankle, can't practice today. I'm here though.
You're very fond of that option.
Hey, it works, especially if you're a superstar.
Yeah.
It doesn't work if you're just another guy.
So back to DK Metcalf for a second, because you mentioned the receivers there, and there's 3 good ones. The Huskies last year, so the offensive coordinator from the Huskies came over to Washington, to Seattle, sorry. And that offense, the Huskies, over 15 games, had over 5,000 passing yards. So you extrapolate that, even if you dent that number, you extrapolate that over an 18-week schedule, so 17 games, that offense could potentially throw for 5,000 yards. There's easily a piece of the pie for each of those three guys. I mean, even Noah Fonts can finally get resurrected and potentially live up to his hype of yesteryear when he was with the Broncos. I think all three of these guys can be very relevant. Potentially have 3,000-yard receivers on the same team. Entirely possible. I think Metcalf is the lead guy there. I think maybe JSN passes Lockett this year. Maybe he stays behind Lockett this year. I don't know. But I really like the upside in this offense. It's a little risky, but I'm all for it.
It for sure is a little risky, but to your point, though, where the Huskies playing defenses like the San Francisco 49ers, I think you need to roll that back a little bit.
I'm just saying that was over 15 games. If you keep it the same, but make it 17 games, it's still 5,000 yards. Now it could be less
Yep.
than that and still be really good and still have 30,000-yard receivers.
Who and was their quarterback better or worse than Geno Smith? Because I feel like they like to hide Geno a little bit from throwing the ball a ton.
Well,
Might be where
I mean,
Howell comes in.
I guess it's do you want to go on pure overall talent or do you want to go on comparable talent to competition? Because if you go like who is better, Geno Smith in the NFL or Michael Penix in college, Michael Penix in college would be better. But if you're talking about who right now, today, if they're playing against each other, who would be better? I think Geno Smith is better right now.
If you were starting a team in the NFL, who would you want on your team, Michael Penix or Geno Smith?
Well, you're talking franchise. So now I want the younger guy for the long term. But if you're like
ageist.
but if you're like, hey, we're gonna start up a league in Madden and play right this second, and we're gonna do a season long tournament, I would pick Geno over Penix. If that makes sense. If we're going on a year basis, Geno. If we're going on franchise, I want Penix.
All I can think about right now is extrapolating that sound that I want the younger guy and just making it a drop for this pod.
Let's not send me to prison for no reason, Jeff. Okay.
All right, who do you got at number 15?
At number 15, I have old trusty Mike Evans, who's got probably the safest floor out of anyone outside of the top 5. You can always count on him for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns basically every season. Even with losing their offensive coordinator, I think that's still easily achievable for this offense. So Mike Evans is the guy for me here. Jeff, how do you feel about him and where do you have him?
So I have him a lot higher than this because he finished number 5 last year. So like this is a pretty big drop from last year.
Well, different offensive coordinator. So
you're factoring in the Canellis effect, we'll call it. But I love him this year, and I still think that he's going to be the focal point of the offense. I'm glad that they were able to work out a deal to keep him a lifetime Buccaneer, it feels like now. That is only positive, and that's kind of where he's happiest, and I think that's where he'll play the best. All right, my number 15 is your guy, Nico Collins, and this is where I am comfortable putting Nico. He finished number 9 last year, so this is a little bit of a drop for him, but there's a ton of wide receivers like Cooper Kupp that missed a lot of the year last year that are going to be a little bit higher than him. And then there's going to be players like Justin Jefferson that are going to be higher than him too that have missed some time last year.
Yeah, I have him a smidge higher than this, but I still like Nico. I still think he's the number 1 in this offense. He's the best vertical guy in this offense. He's the tallest wide receiver in this offense. He's already got a rapport with CJ Stroud. So I think he can outperform this and go back up to the top 10 at some point. It is difficult to slate that in considering the target competition on that team. So I can see why he's here, but it's a reasonable spot in my opinion.
All right. And my number 14, this is where I got Deebo Samuel. So just 2 slots ahead of Brandon Ayuk, his teammate.
Oh man, I love the way the next few rounds are going to turn. So just because the receivers I get to say back to back, I'm fine with Deebo being here. That's okay. I think this is kind of his ceiling, but I think it's reasonable, especially if you think he's going to have similar usage as he had last year. And you indicated that earlier that you think it's going to be almost exactly the same as last year. So reasonable spot given that perspective. I have a guy that you hate on all the time, and even in this podcast, I feel like you hated on him. I have Michael Pittman Jr. with Indianapolis at 14.
Wow.
He reminds me so much of Vincent Jackson with the Chargers and Phillip Rivers back in the day. I think that with Anthony Richardson, assuming Anthony Richardson plays all of or most of this season, it's going to be more vertical than with Minshew. So I think he'll have a lot more deep shots. I think he'll get a lot more red zone targets. He only got 4 touchdowns with Minshew at the helm last year. I think he's due for positive touchdown regression. If you add 3 or 4 touchdowns to what he did last year, he finishes significantly higher than where he did. I don't see how he doesn't have more stats all the way around the board than he did last year. So for me, it's Michael Pittman, and I think people are underrating him. So I will gladly take him this year and hold on to him wherever he ends up going. He was 15 last year. He is currently going as the wide receiver 18, and I think he's going to have better stats. So I don't know how he would not be in anyone's top 15.
Yeah, we'll see if he gels with Anthony Richardson. I guess that's going to be the biggest question because we didn't really get to see it last year. We saw Minshew get Pittman the ball last year. So it'll be interesting. He's entering his 5th NFL season where he'll turn 27 this year. So he's not really young. We already know what he is. He's probably already hit his peak, in my opinion. No one hits their peak at 27. Like, you can shake your head there, but no one hits their peak at 27. They're normally at 25, 24, 25, 26, somewhere in there that they would hit their peak, and then they would be on their downside of their peak after that. So you could keep hoping for that, and I'll enjoy it because that means you'll end up with him on a lot of teams, and I won't have to.
I'm very happy to have him, Jeff, so I don't mind at all.
Absolutely. He's never made a Pro Bowl. He's got what, 5 seasons into the NFL, 4 seasons into the NFL. And he's only got 336 catches, 3,662 yards, and 15 touchdowns. So he doesn't really scream a world beater to me.
Well, he was playing with geriatric quarterbacks before Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew got there. So, I mean, that's completely understandable. Playing with
And now
a
he's playing with
38,
an
39-year-old
inactive
Philip Rivers, playing with a 38-year-old Matt Ryan. Like, that's not gonna do wonders for your production. So we'll see how it goes
He'll
this
be
year.
playing
We'll
with
see.
Joe Flacco this year, right?
Well, I definitely have a couple games factored in, and Joe Flacco can still sling it. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
He gets to
But
play with an inactive and inaccurate quarterback this year.
he'll still catch the ball. My number 13 is a guy you talked about just a couple picks ago. That's where I have Nico Collins. So just 2 spots ahead of you.
Don't hate it.
They're guys I like more, and obviously, again, he suffers from target competition, so he would be
He
higher
suffers.
if Diggs wasn't signed. Nico Collins would be higher than this spot. So they do eat into each other's production, which is why they're both lower than I feel like their talent level indicates.
Yeah, if you suffer from target competition, there may be some medicine for that somewhere. I don't really know, but I don't hate it. So number 13 here might be a little controversial because he's never done it, but it's 3rd-year wide receiver Garrett Wilson here. He's my number 13 spot. I do expect him to take a giant leap forward this year with Aaron Rodgers at the helm. It's by far the best quarterback he's ever played with, and he already has a top 19 finish in his NFL career with Zach Wilson. So this is not a stretch in any opinion.
You thought you were being controversial with him. I have him significantly higher than this spot.
What?
I-
How do
I
you
think-
do that without seeing it? You did it with Pittman too. Like, you haven't seen it put together. You're like, I'm just gonna bet on this.
So, okay, Garrett Wilson, he obviously finished wide receiver 31 with terrible quarterback play. However, he had 168 targets and I think 95 catches, and he had over 1,000 yards, and he only had, I think, 3 touchdowns last year. You give him 7 touchdowns, 8 touchdowns, and the same stats, like he's automatically in the top 24 at the minimum. And you
Yep.
have Aaron Rodgers, if he plays all year and he's relatively healthy, it'll be more efficient numbers. So I absolutely can see him at 13 or higher. He's
Yeah.
also one of the most talented wide receivers in the league right now. So to me, he's one of the top 10 talented wide receivers, and I think he's in an exceptional spot on a
Yeah.
team that's going to be competitive, but probably playing from behind a few times, so they're going to pass the ball. I
Yep.
absolutely see, to me, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall to the moon.
But you'll admit that he does have more competition this year for targets, because I know we've talked about that with Nico and Diggs. He's got Mike Williams joining the fold, and he's also got Corley joining the fold as well.
Yeah, but not to the same degree the other guys are, and your counterpoint usually is
Yep.
it makes it
More
easier
quality
because
targets.
more quality targets. So, I mean, I don't know
Yep.
how much. Just
I mean,
I'm
I
just
got him
imagining.
13, so I agree.
Yeah,
the amount of quality increase between quarterback play, improved offensive line, better supporting cast at the wide receiver position is going to be significant. He might get less targets, but he'll be significantly more efficient. He has very good yards after the catch. He's an all-around wide receiver. I can't imagine him finishing below the top 15. And I think he should safely be almost top 10 for anyone out there as well.
All right. So the top 12 should go a little bit faster because as we get down to the nitty gritty, we should have a lot of the same guys. But number 12, I don't know if you have number 12 in your top 12, but this is Drake London for me. I believe playing with Kirk Cousins now, he's going to have his breakout year. And he's young enough still to deserve this breakout year.
So I like these young wide receivers, third, fourth year wide receivers. I have London fairly high up, but he and Wilson, just like you, are next to each other, but they're much higher up on this list. I agree with all the positive things: better quarterback play, better offensive system, more competitive. I think that he'll get more usage. I think he and Garrett Wilson are two of the top 10, top 12 wide receiver talents in the league and good systems, which means they'll outperform some guys that might be more talented, like some of the rookies this year. Might be more talented overall, but are in worse situations. So I have them higher.
Yep, and they're
I
still young
actually-
enough. They're still young enough to have that breakout, unlike Michael Pittman.
Michael Pittman has actually been putting up a lot of catches, a lot of targets, and he just hasn't been getting the touchdowns. If he gets the touchdowns, I mean, he's up there. And touchdowns are
He's averaging 80 catches a season. That's not a lot of receptions a year.
I mean, kind of
And 900
is,
yards.
but
80 catches,
I-
900 yards.
I mean, what was Devontae Adams his first 3 or 4 years in the league? Like,
Adams put up one good year, and it was his third year, so he put it up on his rookie deal.
yeah, I think
Pittman
Pittman's
hasn't.
going to be good, and I think you just undersell it because you don't like Anthony Richardson as a passer.
No, and I got Pittman at 102 catches, 1,015 yards, and 6 touchdowns.
I don't know how he's not higher on your list then.
The 6 touchdowns are going to hurt him every single time.
Yeah, I can agree with that, but
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've got Anthony Richardson throwing for 19 touchdowns, and I got to spread that around.
yeah, I have Pittman significantly higher than that. So, all right, fair enough.
'Cause
Whatever.
There's Josh Downs. There's Adonai Mitchell. That's your guy too.
People are way too high on Josh Downs. Like, I don't think he's going to be that significant of a threat. I think at best he's the wide receiver 2 on that team, but he might be wide receiver 3 on that team. And I think he's very similar in some regards to Jaden Reed. So they're kind of relatively similar wide receivers. So I can get why you like him so much. But
But he had
Pittman's-
68 grabs last year. Let's not scoff at that. Like, he's only 12 off of what Pittman has averaged the first 4 years.
Yeah, but they have no other target competition at all now. Like, it's the 3 of
They
those
had
guys. The
Pierce
tight
last
tight
year.
ends
They
aren't
had
very
all their
good.
tight ends.
I'm pretty sure they had multiple tight end injuries last year too.
Yeah,
Like,
and one of them was in legal trouble, I believe, too. So we'll see
Yeah.
how that all shakes out.
I mean, all 3 of those guys are ahead of Alec Pierce, who might not even make the roster if he can't improve his game. But
I agree. I have him ahead of him. But Adonai Mitchell might take a year of seasoning to get him ready, but he's another guy that I have up there. Oh, right. So where are we now? We are on your number 12.
so I like the turn here because I have both Rams wide receivers here. So I have Cooper Kupp 12, and I have your boy at number 11. So I have, if I just got to get back to my list here, I have Puka Nakua at number 11.
Puka Nacua.
Cooper Kupp got hurt last year, and Puka got significant looks because they weren't getting much help from anybody else until Demarcus Robinson stepped up a little bit. I think with Cooper being healthy all year, I think that there'll be more of a balance between Cooper and Puka. I think Puka's going to have more yards per catch, be a better downfield threat. I think Cooper Kupp's going to be more of the underneath. They'll probably move both of them around a lot. So I have Cooper getting more catches and Puka getting more yards. I think the touchdowns will probably be split. They did spend a lot of money on getting a tight end over there, and I think that they've been trying to find a way to have a productive tight end for a while. It hasn't worked out with Higbee or anyone else that they've put out there. This might be the year that a tight end gets more usage. I think Demarcus Robinson might get more catches and yards than people think. So it'll be a little bit more balanced, but these two guys are by far the top two options for this team. So I like both of them here. Jeff, how do you feel about those guys there? Obviously, I'm sure you have Puka higher than this, but how do you feel about that?
So I have them both a little bit higher than this. I saw what they could support last year, and it does make me believe that they could support similar production this year. I think they're going to be without Higbee for the first month or two of the season, and that's kind of why they spent on a tight end. So we'll see how that actually turns out. But they do have that Demarcus Robinson that you've been talking about that actually, like, he looked really good last year in his short spot starts. So, but I do expect Kupp to be 100% this year, and I do expect him to return to a lot of his form. So hopefully he can stay healthy in the preseason. Hopefully they both can stay healthy in the preseason. All right. So let's go to my number 11 then. And I have A.J. Brown here at number 11. Thoughts on A.J. Brown here before I hop to number 10?
Thoughts on A.J. Brown? I like A.J. Brown a lot, and I think that with the offensive coordinator change, he's going to be featured a lot more. I have him a little bit higher than this, but this is a more than reasonable spot to have him slated.
All right. And then my number 10, and you're gonna scoff at this because we've already talked about him, but Stefon Diggs is here at number 10 for me. And I'm going to probably end up with a lot of shares of Stefon Diggs. I may not pick him as my 10th receiver because I might know ADP and who I'm drafting against. So just because he's my number 10 doesn't mean I might not hold on to him and try to grab my 11 and then go back and get my number 10 a little bit later if I know that he'll hang around a little bit.
Yeah, way too high for me. I know you think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for Houston, and I know you focus on where he's finished with Buffalo, where he's finished before with Minnesota, and you think the trend will just continue. I don't think that that's the case anymore. I mean, I get being high on him where he landed was a very good spot, even though he left Buffalo with Josh Allen. I just can't put him in my top 10. I can't do it. I think that's a little too high.
I mean, a 2025 second round pick is nothing to scoff over, especially because it could be a higher one because it's the Minnesota Vikings pick.
Yeah, that's true, but I think that it was guaranteed to have Houston was just trying to shore up their receiver core because Dell got hurt, Nico
That
Collins
was an
this time.
expensive shore up.
Yeah, well, they want to compete right now, and they want to protect CJ Stroud and give him more weapons. So I'm all for that. They want to buy time for Mechie to have a chance to develop, or Hutchinson to have a chance to develop. So
I think Mechie might have we might have lost Mechie time because I think he's set to negotiate a new deal here very shortly, and I think his time might be running out in the NFL.
Well, I think this is year 3 for Mechie.
Yep.
He missed basically his entire rookie campaign with a disease. Spent all of last year trying to get back to full health and get back to full playing speed, get into the rhythm of things. So this year he has a chance to show up, but if he doesn't, then probably going to get cut before he even gets a chance to get a new deal.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Like it might have already passed him by because I don't know if he'll have opportunity this year. All right, who do you got at 10? Let's go to top 10.
My number 10 is Brandon Ayuk. So he's in a great offensive system. He's the arguably number 1 guy in the system. He's hyper efficient. He's got very good yards after the catch. He is a deep threat. He's trying to earn a contract. He's got every reason to put up big numbers this year. So I like him. I think he officially passes Debo in the points column this year for fantasy football. And even if he gets traded somewhere else, I still expect him to finish close to this spot, especially if it's Washington and a good landing spot. If it's Pittsburgh, it's going to be interesting where that falls. But most likely he's
lower
safe at San Francisco. I have to lower both of them.
Yep. So we don't want that. But yeah, I love him. We're not too far off. We're 6 spots off. But it's interesting that you got him leaping Debo here because that might mean that they cut Debo after the year and try to re-sign Ayuk.
Or trade Debo, potentially.
One or the other, yeah. Number 9 for you, sir.
All right. So number 9 for me is one of your fan favorites, and that is Davante Adams with the Raiders. I think that he's still by far the best weapon on this entire offense. I think they're trying to make him happy, and I think he's going to get peppered with the ball. He does get some help with bringing on Bowers, the tight end, in the rookie draft here. I think he's going to split the coverage with them and take some pressure off underneath. So Adams is going to have some big games. I don't know how much longer Adams is going to be with the Raiders, and they're trying to keep him happy. They have a hard time trading him with the cap implications right now. So I think they have to do everything they can to keep him happy. And I think that's going to equate to the number 9 finish.
Sounds good, and it'll be interesting watching him play with Gardner Minshew this year.
Sure.
No, I do want to add to this, though, because there are trade rumors out there with him right now, and he's denying them. But stranger things have happened. I know you just mentioned the cap implications around this. Just so we're clear on this, that the dead cap right now for him for this year would be $40 million. So it's not undoable because his cap is 25, and they're already under the cap going into this year. So they could do it. I don't know if they will, but they might try to get something for him while he still has some value at the age of 32 this season. Oh, right. And then obviously with all of that, we can, you know how they have like the post June 1st and the post June 1st trade. Now that we're post June 1st, the dead cap to trade him is only $7 million this year. So they would actually save $8 million against the cap and then $15 million next year. It is doable, a little more doable than you thought, right? They would save $17 million trading him on the cap.
I mean, a little bit, but I don't. If they trade him, their season's over before it began.
It's already over with their two quarterbacks anyways. They're not going to go anywhere with Herbert and Mahomes anyways. So they might be better to restock the cupboard. And plus, their running back position, I feel like, is a mess.
You got to think of it as an organization standpoint. They won't get anyone to buy tickets if they're not competitive. And if they trade Adams, then they're waving the flag right now. And their owner's already poor. He can't afford lack of ticket sales.
Trade deadline then, maybe?
Maybe
all the tickets are already sold?
Yeah. For all the season
the tickets might already all be sold, so because it is Vegas.
Maybe.
They do have a pretty awesome situation because it's Vegas. But we can hop into my number 9 here. It's Mike Evans. We've already talked about him. We're six or so slots off from each other. And you had him at 15. I have him at 9. I just believe that he could have a similar finish to last year where he finished 5, but except for Justin Jefferson, obviously ahead of him and such. He's been very consistent too, just like Stephon Diggs. Got to go back to old trusty.
Yeah.
All right. You ready for number?
Yeah.
This is where I have my first Rams wide receiver, and it is the second year wide receiver in Puka Nacua.
Wow. So you not only have both these guys higher than me, but you have Puka lower than Cooper Kupp.
Yes. I have seen it with Kupp. Kupp is otherworldly when he plays at his top of his game, especially with Stafford.
Interesting.
Which is one step above what Puka did last year, which was otherworldly for a rookie.
So a lot of people have Puka this high already. Most people have Cooper Kupp in the teens or lower. So I mean,
with a lot of Kupp.
Yes.
It's fine.
Yeah, Puka is fine at this spot. I think this is probably around his market value. So I think that's fine. All right.
All right. Who do you got at number 8 then?
I have someone you've already mentioned. I have AJ Brown at this spot. I think he will be a top 8 finisher. I think he's going to be a focal point in Kellen Moore's offense. So we've seen what he did for Keenan Allen. We've seen what he did for Lamb as well. I think AJ Brown will be a big time scorer this year.
Sounds good. But yeah, so like I had AJ Brown a little bit lower to begin the season because he did have a little bit of a down year last year. Didn't show up in the stat sheet as much, but it showed up in like his attitude towards the games, like when he wasn't getting the ball thrown to him and such. So kind of hedged my bet a little bit at 11, but 8 I would be comfortable with taking him as well. Who do you have at 7?
So at number 7, I have Drake London out of Atlanta. So I'm big on him this year. He gets freed from the Arthur Smith prison. He gets freed from quarterback purgatory. I think no matter who's throwing him the ball this year between Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix, it's going to be vastly improved from previous years. So I am sky high on him, and I will probably be trying to acquire him when I can in most drafts.
Yeah, and you're 5 slots ahead of me, but we both have him wide receiver 1, so that is something. So my number 7 is Cooper Kupp. So I'm the Rams are back to back for me as well. So there's 6 points difference between Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua in my projections this year, which is pretty insane considering that I don't really look at yards or anything like that. I kind of look at what the numbers spit out to me, and they have very different numbers, yet the same numbers. Like they both have over 100 catches, but Nacua beats Kupp in yards, but Kupp beats Nacua in touchdowns. So that's kind of how we are going there. My number 6 is Davante Adams, which we've already talked about, and I feel very comfortable with him this year. And he finished last year at 11, but a lot of those games were with Jimmy Garoppolo. Let's not forget that. And this year, I feel like a second-year Aiden O'Connell, or, in my opinion, a Gardner Minshew would be a better option for him.
We'll see. I obviously think Aiden O'Connell's going to start week 1. And, I mean, if he suffers, if he plays poorly, I think he'll be pulled and they'll put Minshew in. But Aiden O'Connell is the guy right now. But let's see here. At number 6, have Garrett Wilson. So, like I said, I have them next to each other. They're both young guys. They're both supremely talented. They're now in the best situations that they've ever been in the pros. So, I think sky's the limit for these two guys. Jeff, how do you feel about Garrett Wilson being here too?
I think that is high, but I like the boldness of this because I do believe in his talent. So we'll see. Just not quite ready to knock him ahead of the for sure guys that have been the last 4 or 5 years. You know, I gotta see it to believe it, but I might get some shares with him at 13. We'll see where he's going in drafts a little bit later. All right, who do you got at 5?
All right. So at number 5, we're now in the top 5 here. That's great. All right. I have, you're going to hate this. I have Justin Jefferson at number 5 this year. Out of everyone left, he has the worst quarterback situation, the worst surrounding talent situation. So I don't see a way that he'll put up wide receiver number 1 numbers this year, like overall number 1. But I do think he will finish as a top 5 either way. He's too talented not to. Jeff, I hope that doesn't hurt your soul too much over there. I hope you can survive that.
For sure, I can. But I will say one thing about Justin Jefferson is that he did this all last year with Joshua Dobbs, and he was one of the top fantasy scorers per week. So not too worried. So coming in at number 5 is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. So the Sun God comes here, and that's where I am willing to put him. So I still have Justin Jefferson a little bit higher than him.
All right.
Oh, great.
Go ahead and break down your number 4.
My number 4 is Ja'Marr Chase. So he's a guy that has Joe Burrow probably for the whole season, and we're going to see what actually happens there with Ja'Marr Chase. But that's where I got Ja'Marr Chase.
I also have Ja'Marr Chase at number 4, and I think that's a reasonable spot for him. I think he's going to be peppered by Joe Burrow, and I think that really at this point, the top 3 are almost interchangeable for me, maybe even the top 5, depending on your own actual preference. So for me, number 3 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he is going to get monster usage. I think Jared Goff is much better than Sam Darnold, much better than J.J. McCarthy. I think, like I said before with the quarterback video, I think Goff has a reasonable chance to be an MVP this year. Amon-Ra St. Brown is his number 1 target. So if you have watched receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown has a vendetta against every receiver that was taken ahead of him. He always has that in his locker and reads it before all the games. In practice, he catches over 200 balls after the practice is ended. He has a monster regime, whatever. He has a monster routine. And I think that he has a very ambitious attitude. So I really like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he's now surpassed Keenan Allen for the best possession wide receiver, in my opinion, and he's younger. I think he has a chance to finish wide receiver number 1 when it's all said and done.
Yeah, as you said, the top 5 are probably some sort of interchangeable. And at my number 3, I have Justin Jefferson. So he isn't even the top spot. I think he's the best wide receiver in football right now, but he's still not the top spot because of the quarterback play. So I think that does kind of put into your narrative around that. And then hopping into my number 2, which might be a little bit of surprise, but this is Tyreek Hill's spot at number 2 for me. So I think you can guess who my number 1 is, but let's hear who your number 2 and number 1 are first.
All right, my number 2 is CeeDee Lamb. I think he also has a chance to finish wide receiver number 1 purely based on at least just targets and touchdowns, but I think he'll also get the yardage to back that as well. It's hard to think of anyone else more pivotal to the Cowboys' success on offense than CeeDee Lamb. If he wasn't there, I think Dak Prescott would be in trouble. So CeeDee Lamb for me, number 2. Number 1, Tyreek Hill. This guy could get 2,000 yards any given year, and he can do it on less catches than any of the other guys in the top 5. He's super explosive. They find every way they can to get him the ball. He and Tua have the offense down in a way where it's a lot of anticipatory throws, whereas most guys have to actually aim and locate the wide receiver. Tua typically knows where Tyreek Hill is going to be. Tyreek Hill can destroy any coverage with his speed. So for me, he has to be wide receiver 1 this year.
Yeah, and for the same reasons, similar reasons, I guess. He's not the speed burner that Hill is, but he's going to be the focal point of the Cowboys offense, and Dak is playing for a contract right now. CeeDee Lamb's playing for a contract. This is like the perfect storm for CeeDee Lamb entering 2024. But he's my top receiver, and that's my top 24.
All right. So, any crazy surprises that we haven't already talked about, or do we still want a knife fight over any of these selections? Like, what did you think so far for those guys?
No, I think we're in good shape, and I think we did enough knife fights for one date.
All right. Well, let's do our quick recap, and then we'll close it out. So, I'm going to start again. So, number 24. I have Keenan Allen. Number 23, Amari Cooper. Number 22, George Pickens. Number 21, Deebo Samuel. Number 20, Devonta Smith. Number 19, Stephon Diggs. Number 18, Chris Olave. Number 17, Jalen Waddle. 16, DK Metcalf. 15, Mike Evans. 14, Michael Pittman Jr. 13, Nico Collins. 12, Cooper Kupp. 11, Puka Nacua. 10, Brandon Ayuk. 9, Devonta Adams. 8, A.J. Brown. 7, Drake London. 6, Garrett Wilson. 5, Justin Jefferson. 4, Jamar Chase. 3, Amon-Ra St. Brown. 2, CeeDee Lamb. 1, Tyreek Hill.
All right, I have at 24, DK Metcalf. 23, Zay Flowers. 22, Amari Cooper. 21, T. Higgins. 20, Chris Olave. 19, Jalen Waddle. 18, Rashee Rice. 17, Jaden Reed. 16, Brandon Ayuk. 15, Nico Collins. 14, Deebo Samuel. 13, Garrett Wilson. 12, Drake London. 11, A.J. Brown. 10, Stephon Diggs. 9, Mike Evans. 8, Puka Nacua. 7, Cooper Kupp. 6, Devontae Adams. 5, Amon-Ra St. Brown. 4, Jamar Chase. 3, Justin Jefferson. 2, Tyreek Hill. And 1, CeeDee Lamb.
All right. Well, I feel like we've got some good lists there, even if you're wrong about half of them. All right. I'm just messing with you.
I think you're wrong about the other half then.
All right. Look, we need to put them right next to each other and average them out, come out with official rankings.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, that does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this episode. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Everybody.